Let's move to talk about the Bundesliga now, where the crisis club of the league is arguably even more of a crisis now because they sacked their manager Marco Rose. This wouldn't have been a surprise though, Andy, because hasn't it been coming, this sacking of Marco Rose that happened earlier on in the week?
Yeah, for a long time. So look, they haven't wanted to do it really for the rest of this season. He's not just from Leipzig, was born there, but he came through on a sort of Red Bull apprenticeship. If you look at the start of his coaching career at Red Bull Salzburg. So he's someone who's got respect, not just within the city, but within the organisation. People like him. And there's stuff that would have seen other RB Leipzig coaches sacked this season that hasn't seen him sacked. You know, Marcel Schäfer and Oliver Mintzlaff have really always supported him in public up until the point that they fired him. But the reality is they lost 7 out of 8 Champions League games this season. And for a club that's as ambitious as them, that is nowhere near good enough. I think you can go back to the 5-1 defeat at home to Wolfsburg around November, December time when they were looking a bit prone as well. He could have gone then. The fact that this game that they lost at Borussia Mönchengladbach, his old club, of course, and he left there quite acrimoniously, Marco Rose. So the fans are absolutely delighted to push him over the edge and see him get fired when they beat them 1-0. The fact that Borussia Mönchengladbach overtook them, and they are the most transitional of transitional teams, but in this really weird year of Bundesliga, they're actually in with a chance of getting a Champions League place now, which I think points, as much as how well they're doing, it points to the weaknesses in Leipzig and Dortmund, who have acted as like a human shield, really, for, as you say, this crisis club, Dotun, because Dortmund have obviously been the headline all season because it's gone so badly for them. So it's just got to a point where they just can't anymore. And that's exactly what Marcel Schäfer, the sporting director, said when he made his statement. He said, you know, we love Marco, but come on, you know, we need to get something out of this season. You know, it's a terrible look for them if they don't make the Champions League, not least because they've been spending a lot of money. They've quite changed their transfer habits over the last little while. But the feeling, I guess, that nothing was going to change came really from that game against Borussia Mönchengladbach, where, you know, you get the impression if they'd still have been playing that game, they wouldn't have scored yet. That they weren't creating anything with so many good attacking players. 5th successive away game that they hadn't scored in. Now, obviously, they've since had the first game since Marco Rose. They did score in that away from home. Didn't win. Got knocked out of the DFB Pokal at the semi-finals. But really, Zotlov, his replacement, just has to qualify for the Champions League. There's no other option.
And how's he doing at the moment?
Well, they didn't have a great start. They lost to Stuttgart in the DFB Pokal last night, 3-1. Stuttgart, another team who is in that bracket of they're very capable, but Leipzig should have a better squad than this. And really, I think it's we will get to this. It's time to start asking some questions about the broader model there. But in the short term, this is just a really good team on paper because they have spent a bit of money, like Andy said. And we have a front two of Loic Openda and Benjamin Sesko. I mean, it's arguably 2 of the best forwards in the league not playing for Bayern Munich. I mean, this should be tremendous. And I think we had this chat earlier in the season. If you sit down and look at this Leipzig squad on paper, this is really good. And for them to be behind Frankfurt, Mainz and Gladbach, it's just not, you can't. And it's interesting thing about Rose, you say that Mintzlaff was a fan and they liked him and he's a Leipzig guy. He's also a really good friend of Jurgen Klopp's. So you can think Jurgen Klopp has come in as this new lord of global things at the fizzy drink empire. He will not have wanted to sack Rose either because they know each other back from the Mainz days. So I'm sure this was like a very sort of heavy-hearted decision for everyone involved. But as you say, this just can't continue. And I have real doubts of whether Marco Rose is actually a very good manager at this point, given that things like the way things went for him at Dortmund were not very impressive either. So I think there are questions about him. And it's very, but that is the upside for Leipzig, though, is that there is a lot of quality in that squad, and there are games left in the season, and the points gap to get up to fourth and third is actually not huge. Like it is doable. No. So if they can get going, it can still be done.
I think that's the point, isn't it? It's salvageable at this point. I'm just thinking there after what you said, Jurgen Klopp, if he's sort of pivoting from being this everyman nice guy, what better way to do it than come into your new job and fire a string of your mates? Because I always thought it maybe taken the job slightly later. We only started from January the 1st, so they could sack Pep Lijnders before that. But I mean, he was, to all intents and purposes, in the building. It's like, well, yeah, I don't start till January the 1st, so I can't make the phone call, but I'm fine with you sacking him. Maybe I'll just send him a sympathy card and a box of Maltesers afterwards. I don't know. But I think that the fact that Klopp has come in, I think is really important, because it shows that not just Leipzig, but Red Bull want to really dominate the top of European football. But as you say, Lars, are they capable of doing that? Because they have subtly, but very, very significantly changed the signing policy. Whereas they would only sign like players in their 20s beforehand, their early 20s. The only experienced players they really had were ones like Emil Forsberg and Gulashi, who'd been there for absolutely ages and became experienced players while they were there. And to an extent, I suppose, Sabitzer before he went off to Bayern as well. But I think when you look at what they've done over the last little while, firstly, they spent nearly 50 million on Lois Openda, and then they complete the deal to permanently sign Xavi Simons, a deal that could end up being, if they have to pay all the add-ons and all the rest of it, about 80 million euros. All of a sudden, you don't buy those guys to stand pat, do you? You don't buy those guys to just get a Champions League place every season. Now, look, this season has become what they will hope is a footnote in what they're doing. So that they have to salvage the minimum from this season, which is making the Champions League. But in terms of, and Zotlov won't be the coach next season, I don't think, because he works directly with Jurgen Klopp in this sort of Red Bull overview sort of area. And, he'll probably go back to that. I do wonder who's the right coach for them, and if it needs to be someone who's a bit more highfalutin, because they are going to want a challenge from here, aren't they? You don't buy those players to finish second and third every season. And I think it was really interesting in this game at Stuttgart, in which, obviously they would have loved to win the Pokal this season, but where this season will stand or fall on will be whether they qualify for the Champions League or not. And I actually thought the performance was quite encouraging. They were a little bit unlucky to lose. They created a ton of chances, a ton more than Stuttgart, and that's what they've not been doing in recent weeks, which has kind of finished off Rosa. And it obviously, which is particularly damning when you've got a lot of really good attacking players. But it was interesting that the row in the director's box, you had Jurgen Klopp came along to the game, and Mario Gomez, who of course is the technical director for Red Bull globally as well, he was sat next to them as well. So clearly all eyes are on streamlining, making sure this Leipzig project is absolutely on the straight and narrow. That is the focus of Red Bull football at the moment, more even so than Paris FC, which, in time could be really huge as well.
Yeah, and Lars, I suppose the rumour mill is, well, it's often wrong, but at the moment, as Andy says that the current coach won't be the coach next season, the rumour mill's already spinning. And one of the plates that is spinning is a said Oliver Glasner at Crystal Palace. Would he, from what you understand, be the right fit that Andy talked about a moment ago for Leipzig or not?
I think he's a very, very capable guy. He's someone who has worked in the Red Bull system very briefly before, so he is familiar with the methodology, and his teams have Well, interesting with Glasner is his teams have played in slightly different ways, which is one of the things I like about him. And it's one of the reasons I think he's been successful in England is because he is a multifaceted coach who can set up a team to do different things. And I think he's a very capable guy, and that it wouldn't be a bad hire by any means, I don't think. But I think there are 2 big points I'd like to make about Leipzig. The first one is very specific, which is that Andy is very obviously completely correct in the sense that they are spending bigger sums of money now. But if you look at their transfers this summer and kind of rank them according to which were expensive, look at the age profile here. Xavi Simons, he was expensive, but he's 21. Antonio Nusa, the Norwegian winger, is 19. They signed him from Club Brugge. They signed Gertrude, the defender from Feyenoord. He's 24. They signed a 22-year-old goalkeeper from Genk. They signed an 18-year-old from Schalke for 10 million euro. So they're still mostly bringing in guys who are on the young side. And as much as the outlay signals a significant amount of ambition, I think the really interesting and worthwhile point to make, and I should credit this to the excellent Seb Stafford-Bloor of The Athletic, who made the point that the thing that unlocked Leverkusen more than anything else, in addition to bringing in Xabi Alonso, was also they brought in Granit Xhaka to marshal the midfield. They brought in Jonas Hoffmann to add some versatility and experience. They brought in guys who were over 30 and had experiences and could be big voices in the dressing room and bring some know-how. And that is the thing, I think, even though it goes against the sort of Red Bull, sign young players, hungry players, have them be very physical and run around a lot. I do think you need more craft and know-how in this team if you're going to go all the way. I think that's a big barrier for them. And I think there's another side of like the curse of the pioneers. Red Bull and their system has been a group that everyone's trying to emulate, and they're very smart, and people from there get poached, and their energetic football and recruitment and multi-club model and all this sort of stuff. It's very good. But the thing is, once you're successful with something that's a little bit new, everyone starts doing the same stuff and you get caught up. You have to keep innovating if you want to get ahead, especially if you have a little bit less money to spend than some of your rivals. And I wonder if there's a risk of them becoming quite satisfied with how things are ticking along and how good they are, and maybe not coming up with new ideas. And I think this is something for them to maybe be mindful of.
I suppose the other thing about your ideas getting pinched, Lars, is I'm talking about the rest of the footballing world from Leipzig, not me from you. Just to make that clear.
That has also happened on other podcasts. Yeah, this is why I'm crediting Seb, because I heard him say something really smart, and I say, I want to make that point, but I'm going to make that. Someone else came up with it first.
We'll be safe. We
I mentioned no names. Maybe there'll be one for the Patreons. Lars dishes the dirt.
But I think the thing is, when your model becomes copied, replicating your own model does become more expensive by definition. Maybe you would be able to buy players that are like Šeško is different because he's from inside the tent, if you like. But buying players who are the next generation that you want to develop, all of a sudden you're in competition with bigger clubs who want to do the same thing, who want to go straight to source. So that can be tricky. But the Xavi Simons thing is particular because some really big clubs wanted him, and he already proved he could do it at the absolute top level. So they laid out an amount of money really for someone who could be a starter for an elite club. And obviously they're not quite an elite club yet. Whether you think they're heading there or not, it's kind of a moot point. The fact is they made an elite club signing, and that comes like a lot of pressure, a lot of expectation, a lot of we have to do something. So with him, I don't think it's quite about. I take your point totally about the age profile, and I do think it's more expensive, and that's just how the market is. But with Xavi Simons, that was a definite switch flicker. We can't not qualify for the Champions League if we've laid out this guy, and actually we need to be up there and challenging next season. And I think particularly the overall picture in German football would encourage you to do that. Now, you're right, they should be taking leaves out the Leverkusen book, but they're probably looking at Dortmund as well and thinking, these are a mess. Like, we can stay, if we play it right, we can get ahead of them and stay ahead of them for a number of seasons and make it difficult for Dortmund to break back into the absolute top bracket, which at the moment is Bayern and Leverkusen, but Leipzig will be feeling, they can and should be part of that as well.
Dortmund, of course, another team that used to get ahead by being good at signing young players, who are now finding that signing the young players is difficult. So maybe when everybody's zigging, there is value to be had by zagging. So maybe the future is just signing a bunch of old dudes and see what happens. Like just go full Allardyce at Bolton. Just find the old dudes who are off, get them in on free contracts and inexplicably high wages, and sort of see if you can maybe have some in it. This would be very good. Maybe the future is the past. I don't know.